Good evening, friends. May I invite the three panelists, Sanjay Subrahmanyan, V Sriram and Krupa Ge, to take their seats on the stage. It's a special evening at the Madras Book Club, and you are in for a treat. Sanjay Subrahmanyan, one of the cult figures of Carnatic music, has written his autobiography, and it is an important addition to the literature on Carnatic music. The book has been written in cooperation with a young but accomplished journalist, Krupa Ge, and interacting with Sanjay and Krupa will be V Sriram. And as you all know, he is a cult figure himself as a historian. As a historian of both Chennai and Carnatic music, and a close friend of Sanjay. Sanjay was born into a family deeply rooted in music. Before he was born, Sanjay's mother was so busy attending concerts that relatives said a baby might be born in the music academy. At the age of just two, he heard a violin concert by Lalgudi Jayaraman and said he wanted to play the violin like him. He was fond of cricket in his younger days. He qualified as a chartered accountant and cost accountant, but his love for music made him switch careers. Sanjay's 180-page autobiography with 10 chapters is titled, On That Note, Memories of a Life in Music. It records his extraordinary and eventful journey in Carnatic music over 5 decades. It abounds in facts, anecdotes and insights, both professional and personal. His first concert was in 1986. He attained musical stardom with his stentorian expressive voice, his knowledge, his flair, his blend of tradition and innovation. He sang all over the world and won numerous honors, of which I'll mention just the Sangeeta Kalanidhi Award of 2015. In 2006, when he was just 37, a documentary film was made about him by Prasanna Ramaswamy. Sanjay says he was inspired by Charlie Chaplin's memoir written at the age of 75. He thought that, like Chaplin, he could wait till 75 for his memoirs. But the COVID pandemic struck. For a person used to rendering a concert every 2 days, not singing for months on end was an ordeal. He decided to pen his memoirs. Sanjay recalls that in 1994, Unnikrishnan's song Ennavale for A.R. Rahman was being heard everywhere. Later, Bombay Jayashree and Nityashree Mahadevan's popularity soared with their film songs. But Sanjay had resolved to stick to Carnatic music. But ironically, after the Sangeeta Kalanidhi Award, he decided to rethink his stand on film songs. His memoir analyzes this change of tack. Sanjay says he opted for Krupa Ge to write his memoirs with because he liked her novel, What We Know About Her. She was, of course, delighted and consented immediately. The book is the first person. Krupa says she had to understand Sanjay and his personality and his thinking to be able to convert his thoughts to words. She has a working knowledge of music, and that obviously helped. Krupa had worked with the Hindu and the Times of India. She created something of a sensation with her book Rivers Remember about the 2015 floods in Chennai. The book was launched by the Madras Book Club at the Taj Connemara. She described the floods as a man-made disaster and explained why it was so. But it was her novel, What We Know About Her, that won the big prize, joint authorship with Sanjay. V Sriram is of course known to one and all, a media celebrity without compare. He describes himself on Twitter as part entrepreneur, part historian, part writer, part crackpot. He is the author of 30 books, mainly on music, on South India's heritage, on Chennai, on corporate India. This includes his very first book, Carnatic Summer, about 20 legends of Carnatic music. It includes biographies of Sambudi Srivasayar and Bangalore Nagaratnam. It includes a biography of the Music Academy. He is the editor of Madras Musings and the secretary of the Music Academy. He has conducted scores of heritage walks in Chennai and in several cities of Tamil Nadu. He is active with the audiovisual media as well. He runs his own YouTube channel titled History Time with V Sriram, on which he uploads a program every week. It is at once informative, provocative and entertaining. A word about the Madras Book Club. It was started more than 20 years ago by Mr. S. Muthaya and his publisher friends. We meet twice a month to discuss a contemporary book. The author is in conversation with an eminent personality of his choice. Sometimes we listen to standalone talks. We urge those of you in the audience who are not members of the Madras Book Club to become members. Jayanti or Gopi of the Madras Book Club will be happy to give you a simple form to fill. Annual membership fee is 1200 rupees and 2000 rupees for dual membership. So friends, let's get ready for the Sanjay Subrahmanyan Krupe Ge show. It will go on till about 7:45 p.m. and will be followed by a Q&A session with the audience. May I request V Sriram, the moderator, to take over.
Good evening, friends. Thank you, Mr. Madhu, for that introduction. Good evening, Sanjay and Krupa. It's now been how many months since the book came out? I think it was in December.
Yeah, 5 months.
Yeah, and and I'm sure that it has been received rapturously by the music fans of Sanjay Subrahmanyan, of which I always like to include myself as one of the many headed there.
Me too.
That's not a correct expression in Carnatic music. So, be very careful about that term. Is this really the first autobiography of a Carnatic musician? Because except for one, I have not really, in recent times I would very easily say.
Technically, if you take U.S. Amanale to also be a Carnatic musician.
But he didn't write about himself.
Charitram was...
Yeah, but Carnatic musician is all about him.
So anyway, that's other than that, I don't think autobiographical, I don't.
Except Papanasam Sivan, very brief.
Yeah.
That's almost a kind of a monograph. It's not a book.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Yeah, I think so. This is really the first time that we have a Carnatic musician, and what is even more interesting is that a musician at a very peak of his performing prowess, exploring new ideas and still being bold enough to document the journey thus far. I think it makes for a very remarkable work. And it will also be, in years to come, it will be a reference volume for everybody, artists, serious students of the art, those who research the art, to see what it was to reach a particular point in a career, and then to look at what happened after this as well, to see where it goes on from there. So, Sanjay, one of the, before I start off on the questions, I must say that for me, in my life, the great high point, one of the many high points is my friendship with Sanjay Subrahmanyan. He was actually the person who got me into writing. in 1999. He was the one who first started me off on that, and I didn't know that it would take such a journey over so many years, so I'm always eternally grateful. And I think this is the right forum to express it as well. So, when you started the book, did you always think that it would be in the first person, or did you even consider, it's a question for both of you, did you even discuss and consider that it could have been in the third person, you writing about him? And what made you finally come to first person, or was it always first person?
See, the point was that was a joint decision, and more than joint decision, it was their decision. Because
When you say
there in the sense the editor Ajita and the publisher and Krupa together, because when they pitched the book to the publisher and all that, so I gave the idea to her. I said I wanted to write a book, and this is what, and I wanted her to write it for me. And then she came back with the whole pitch and all that, and said that we will write it this way. So it was actually Krupa's call with the editor.
Yeah. So I felt like this was one way to sort of bypass any trepidation I might have, in terms of it writing Sanjay Subrahmanyan's book, and I felt like the one way to sort of remove any doubt in my mind that I had that I might not do a good job is to just sort of mold myself and just sort of disappear completely. Yeah, put all the blame on it. If anything goes viral, it's in his voice. So, yeah, but I felt like I'd read a couple of books around that time that I thought did this pretty well, like Sultan, for instance. And I thought that, as they say, Sultan. So I thought of, I thought this idea of writing as him would also lend the book some amount of credibility, as opposed to, I don't know how many people want to hear my thoughts on what his music is, right? But I know everybody here would want to hear his thoughts on his music. So that was really the rationale behind wanting to just disappear and then bring the reader close to it. Because I'd been a journalist, and I felt like this is something I was confident of doing. And then I was also writing fiction, so I felt like this would just be like putting together all of those ideas of what I had learned, and then.
So how did the two of you work together? What was the modality? You would fix up a theme for a day, or would you just...
So the outline of the book was in place before we started meeting, because...
I'm sure you had it all in your mind.
No, not...
Knowing you must have planned it all.
No. I didn't... in fact, I only gave her a brief on what I wanted in the book, and she came up with the entire chapter-wise how to cover it and all that. So we just went back and forth with a few things here and there. So once we were clear on that, she said we will do 10 meetings for the 10 chapters.
Fantastic.
And each meeting would, on the clock, 1 hour. Because the thing was, when I called her and asked her if she'll do the book, she had just delivered a baby. So, and she said, give me a month. Of course, I'll give you many months. But within a couple of months, she was ready to say, I need this break. So she could take off only for that 1 hour, in that sense, because it was a small baby. The kid is 1.5 years old. So during that entire period, she would come exactly for home for 1 hour, and she would finish the course. She would become very well prepared. She had prepared everything. So I just had to talk. And then, of course, we had a couple, 2-3 other meetings just to brush up a few things here and there. But it was done chapter-wise. So literally, every chapter was already pre-configured, and then every interview was based on that chapter.
So when you say it was pre-configured, because you had a brief, from that you had fleshed out a chapter structure with her?
No, actually she had, what she did was, I gave her a brief on what are the things that I wanted in the book. In the sense that, how I wanted the book to have a form to it. And then the structure, she and Ajita, the editor, worked together on the structure, and they pitched it to the publisher. And almost 80 to 90% of whatever they pitched has come out in the book. So we were very clear on the plan and how the book was laid out and where it was going and all that. So that was in the beginning itself.
So, Krupa, how did you manage to structure the questions for a chapter? Even before, just on the basis of the chapter heading, to make it relevant to him, and how did you manage? Because you're saying very tightly 1 hour. And that means the questions had to be fairly clear, and they had to be thought about beforehand before you came for the meeting. So how did you go about it?
Right. So one thing was, of course, there was a crystal clear. When we first spoke itself, Sanjay told me clearly this is what he wanted out of the book, because I needed to understand why this memoir is being written. And so once I understood what it is that he wanted, the thing here is, 1 month postpartum, I agreed to do this book because I've been such a fan of Sanjay's work for so many years, and I obviously couldn't let it go. So because I'd been such a fan, I obviously followed him and his career and his blog, his social media, and so I already had an introduction into this persona, and it's not as if I was going in, fresh, trying to understand somebody. So I already had an idea of, his personality, his following, the cult that we are now speaking of, and so I like to work like that with complete structure, and with my books. In life, not like that, but in books I like to if I give a pitch, even with my first book, the pitch and the final book are like that, a 90% match. And so it gives me the ability to transform an idea into a living, breathing work, because if I stick to the schedule. And so when I write the pitch, I like to actually give it a lot of thought and then write it. And so I spent some time going through all of his blogs, reading through a lot of his archival material. And so actually, by now, you can ask me anything about him from any of his blogs. At any point, I'll be able to reel off the exact. So I obsessively done all of that, which is why we were able to finish those interviews in those 10 sittings. And also the brief from the publisher, Ajita, came that don't sit on this for 3 years like you did with Reverse Remember. We would like this book to come out in a year. And so I had that idea of, that there is a deadline. We were looking at the Margari deadline even when we started the book. And so it was actually Ajita, my editor, who gave me this brilliant idea of doing 10 interviews over 10 sessions. Because at that point, suddenly the book seemed doable in a year. Otherwise, I don't know, we could have just...
Yeah, we could have gone on.
Yeah.
Right. And Sanjay, when she sent you the questions and you were prepared with the answers, one of the great difficulties in an autobiography is being truthful. I have read many film star biographies which should be qualified under fiction. And there are, as you know very well, there are many musician biographies also which border on that. Of course, knowing you, I would not have expected you to be any other. But how did you manage to bring such a brutally minimalist autobiography which still covers everything?
See, the thing is, Ashwatthama Hadaru Jarahamari, the things not said actually are more spicy, I suppose. But see, the thing is, because we were clear on the structure, and there are a lot of things that you don't want to talk about. So that removes a lot of the fluff from the book, basically. So then you are stuck with more or less what you want to write and what you want to say. So that is very clearly laid out. So those things, I don't have any confusions about the information that I want to share or how I want to share it and the names of the people and etc. etc. So yeah, there will be, of course the editor's pen has played a role here and there and all that, but most of it is information that is very much, the public information is already there. The private information is what I tell. So you have to take my word for it.
And how did you manage to retain his voice throughout without bringing your voice into it? That's very tough, because see, you are recording it, and then it's not a question of you're not just transcribing it. There is a lot of creative input that has gone into making it into this form. how is it that Krupa did not manage to come in at various portions into the story?
At this point, I really don't know. It's alchemy. I don't know.
But that's her brilliance. I mean, you have to give it to her for that. Because that's exactly, I mean, I never expected that this will be the output of the book when we started. Because she said it will be in your voice. And then I spoke and gave the interview and spoke about it. And then after the first two chapters, I didn't know if she had transcribed it or she had written it. Frankly, I couldn't tell the difference. Because it was exactly like the language or the construction of the sentences or everything almost correspond to how I speak or what I spoke. So that way, she, with her editor, I suppose, would have played a role in whatever.
Sanjay, you have a pretty strong voice. That's what is coming through.
No, but even then, I think it's a remarkable piece of work that it is the voice of Sanjay Subrahmanyan, but very clearly written by Krupa. It's not as though you have subsumed yourself into kind of a ghostwriter, no. It's very clear that you are also there, but at the same time, you've given him the primordial position.
Actually, to be fair, Mr. Madhu asked me as soon as I came, why didn't you write it yourself? Because you are a good communicator. I said, I'm a communicator, but I'm not a writer. So that is why I got a writer to do it. You know.
I remember, I have a very evil memory, but I'm not going to talk about it. Maybe I'll tell you. Sanjay, this question about, how the point of who is supposed to do what, so, or where. So there was this concert, I remember, Sanjay, and somebody came and asked you, he was a doctor, if I remember correctly, and he said, rendu paattu neenga paadidnom. He said, you said dining table neenga surgery ella panniduvela. I remember he asked this question immediately. I didn't even know where to look. So everything has a certain place, everybody has a certain role to play. This was several years ago, I don't know. Sharda and I still talk about it. Ungathila dining table Anyway, so I just wanted to highlight a couple of passages where I thought this wonderful combination of your writing and his voice comes across. So I listened to everybody. I was a chronic listener. Every evening I would go to a kacheri. Back then Madras had concerts every single day of the year. The entertainment section of the newspaper would announce at least one concert every day. I had no other interest. Cinema was usually reserved for that big Rajinikanth or Kamal Hassan release around Deepavali. I wasn't big on TV either, apart from watching cricket matches, that is. Between 1986 and 93, I heard about 150 to 200 concerts every year. This exercise in devoted listening had a very big creative influence on me, for the live experience was vastly different from the records I had heard. I was at Shastri Hall for a Papanasam Sivan Day Kacheri, where T.N. Tyagarajan was performing. To this day, I am in awe of how he elaborated on the Charukesi Raga at that concert. He slowly built the Sangatis up, step by step, with a few unpredictable phrases sprinkled in that, which would catch me completely off guard, making me go aha out loud. He'd be singing quietly, then suddenly throw in one of those brilliant phrases, and gesture with his hands moving like a wave to show the note's journey, a smug smile on his face. It was a thrilling experience. As Tyagarajan finished the Sangati on a ma, with that signature hand gesture, the hall spontaneously erupted in deafening applause. Imagine as an impressionable young performing artist, you find yourself in a grand concert like this. How do you even manage to remember all these details?
I almost remembered the phrase when you read it out about finish money. This is a small builder. He gave a much longer builder. Otherwise, you would have clapped. Because it's me, you didn't clap. That's how he would. Outstanding.
Krupa, only when we met in preparation for this book did I know about your musical background. I think we need to give it some light over here. Yeah. So why don't you just talk about that for a book?
Yeah, so the musical background that he's talking about is also this sort of, it became the seed for my novel as well, which is my grandfather who ran away from home at the age of 14 to work in the cinema from Vellore to Chennai, and then he was a harmonium player, and he would play in the troupes of various music directors, and eventually rose to become a conductor in the Telugu music director Satyam's orchestra. He was an assistant music director. But the big influence of his on the city's musicscape that still continues to this day is his founding of the Cine Musicians Union, which was the first union that was founded for artists. And so I was talking to my mother about this because I knew we were going to just talk about it today. I asked her, why did he start the union? And she said it was the first union of its kind in the South. Before that, there were only unions in Bombay and in Calcutta. And he had been to Calcutta to work, to play the harmonium as part of some troupes, and he'd been heavily influenced by the ideologies there. And my mother said there were even times when there would be magazines from Russia that would come to her house eventually after he came back here. And then he was pretty influenced, and then he founded the union basically because artists back in the day, this was in the 1950s, anybody who was playing for cinema would get conveyance, and then they would be given a lovely meal by the producers.
It sounds a lot like Carnatic music.
Right? And then the family would just be starving. Right? The artist is fed and the artist has been brought and taken away, but their families would pretty much have nothing to go by. And then artists are artists. They have this, it is a madness, right? You want to keep doing it, but then there is nobody to support you. And so the union was formed, and then eventually it was made a rule that artists had to be given spot cash. If you played a session, you had to be paid immediately, and then a small percentage would go to the union for, taking care of the families of other artists and stuff. And so he was a huge influence on everybody in the family. We used to call him Patakata, he was a Patavadya, and he has taught music to many people. In fact, I don't want to name names, but I even saw an interview of somebody who would go on to become a music director, who said who would come to learn music from my grandfather, but claimed in one of his interviews that he was just playing Gagapapa, and the music just came to him, and then no. But yeah, so all of us sort of grew up listening to his music, the harmonium, and so I was just saying that if I sit in front of a keyboard today, I can just sort of subconsciously play a little bit of it because of that influence.
It's so much in you,
yes,
so to speak, that it can never get out. It'll always be there.
Yes.
So, Sanjay, the question that was asked even earlier, I'm sure, why this book at this juncture?
See, the basic, the most seed for the book basically was that I was going through a change in my musical mindset. And I felt that when that kind of a change that is very radical from what I have done for so many years is happening, I want to document it in some form. See, it's okay if I write down a diary or all that, but I thought that that whole process at that point of time is significant enough. And I always knew I'd write a book at some point. I mean, I have devoured biographies and autobiographies for so many years that at some point I knew that I'm going to write that book. So this was the first thing. I said, okay, this point of time, if I wrote it, it would be more significant. And it would also lead to what I do next, because then that will be enough material for the next book. So in that sense, I thought this was the right idea. If I made it, then 10 chapters wouldn't be enough. I would have probably needed 20 chapters. So in that sense, that was the main motivation to write the book.
And I don't know if you recall, but I think in 2015, after the Carnatic was announced, you had a conversation with Mohan Krishnamurthy, and he had asked you this question, what next? And you had said even then that this is a point to reflect on what further. And I think that is what has really culminated in...
See, in a sense, what happened was somebody very close by actually said that when that Sangeeta Carnatic was given, and then after I started singing, after the TVG sir actually came to one of the concerts in Ragasula Hall, And then he said, hey, inime nee free ah paduva. See, in a sense, what happens, it's a very liberating experience in that sense, because this, when you are in this system, in this Carnatic music system, and there is this big thing hanging, when will you get color? The moment you sing in the academy, the next thing is starting from your uncles and aunts and everybody around you. A speculation will start. Yeah? So that thing is always in the mind. So once that is done, then you are free to do whatever you want. So that's how the whole thing is. And it starts with the music. It starts with what you are singing on stage. It starts with how you are performing. And then it keeps moving from there. And you keep following whatever your mind says and all that. And then this thing called this pandemic that's came into everybody's lives. It changed the way everybody thought about anything. The performing arts itself went through the kind of downturn that it has never seen. If people talk about the plague, we don't know. Even during World War II, concerts were happening. Right, in Vienna or anywhere else. So this was very different because we are stuck at home and you can't even get out. And see, computer engineers can still work from home. They were doing it before and they were doing it in the pandemic and they still continue to do it. They are not like that. Every 3 days, waste you get into Vadila point of home. Really waste you get usage. Short space. So that's the biggest thing that goes through a performing artist's mind. So at that time, so many questions are raised. For instance, you have the time to actually reflect. You have the time to think, what were you doing? Why did you do? Why didn't you do a lot of things? See, where is the time to answer these questions or reflect on these questions and actually analyze them and come to a conclusion? And you are also at that age where your sense of security is higher. At 20 and 25, you are far too insecure as an individual. At 50, it's different. So you have more time to actually, you've done something for 20, 30 years and okay, nothing's going to happen. Now at 30 or 40 or even 35, somebody will say, yeah, அதெல்லாம் பண்ணாத. இப்போ யாரு என்ன வந்து என்கிட்ட பண்ணாதுன்னு சொல்ல முடியும்?
அந்த வயசுல கூட யாராவது சொல்லியிருக்க முடியும்?
அது வேற. பாடாத அதை பாடாதப்பா. But namakku oru bhayam irukku illaya, in the sense that you're not yet confident of. Today it's not like that. So that's the main thing that happens during that. So which is why the whole thing happened in the sense. And it made you think differently about music, about doing other things in music, about singing. For instance, singing in films was always a huge issue. When I didn't sing in films for a long time, people used to keep asking me that question. Many interviews they have asked me in the past, sir, why don't you sing in films? Do you have a problem? I don't have a problem with singing in films. I don't want to sing. At that point of time, my answer was very clear. If I'm a cricketer, I don't want to play football. If I'm a Carnatic musician, I want to sing concerts. I don't want to sing other things because I'm very clear. Sir, our parla. Ian Botham was the cricketer vilayadar, football vilayadar. Dennis Compton cricketer vilayadar, football vilayadar. Irkla acceptance. I illa. That was my thinking was, that's how I defined it. Today it's not like that. Now music is music. Today, in fact, I changed my biodata from musician to singer.
So Krupa, we are talking about changes. So you started with a book which was factual, fact. It's all about the rivers, and it was a stunning book. Let me tell you. You remember that's how we first got to know each other.
Yes.
Because I posted on it, and I still go back to read it occasionally just to pick up a few points here and there.
Can't tell you how much I relied on your work for that book. So I've told in every interview this.
Thank you. Then the second one, all about her. What we know about her, which I have not read, but that is a book on. It's a fiction. It's faction. It's in between, and then you have a autobiography where you have entered the spirit of another person and you've written it.
Right.
So how do you manage all this? Usually a fiction writer is a fiction writer, fact writer, and if you ask me to structure dialogue in a work of fiction, I tried it years ago. In the words of Rajaratnam Pillai, kadudha unak idu varadhu, so leave it. So I then gave it up immediately, saying that no, this is not. How do you manage it?
So I think actually the madness first began with, in terms of writing books, it first began with fiction. I wanted to write fiction first. I started writing my novel first, actually. but that was going on, that was taking a really long time, and it's not easy to be published as a fiction writer in India, especially in English. I don't know about the languages. But so I was pretty much struggling at that time, and then I sort of, when the flood happened, by then I had a literary agent, and then when I pitched the idea for a non-fiction book, because I was also a journalist, that was sort of immediately, there was interest in that immediately. And so when I wrote the non-fiction and fiction almost parallelly. So it was sort of a very, it was a pretty fun experiment, actually. And then now I've done a translation as well from a Tamil novella into English. And this is the memoir. And so I feel like this idea that you were only good at one kind of writing doesn't, in fact, I would encourage you to write fiction if you want to write. But
I've told him this 25 years ago.
Yeah, but that's one thing where I didn't listen to him. The other was to take to board games. That also I didn't. Everything else I had obeyed Sanjay implicit. If Padna, okay, Padna.
Yeah, but I think it's all writing, and you just have to be in that sort of a space. You have to enter that space. Fiction is much more. This is all very collaborative and it involves meeting other people.
Yeah.
Fiction is much more sort of dipping into the subconscious and coming out with something, and it's actually very fun, and I'd recommend it for anybody. Everybody I feel like has a story, something interesting going on in their life.
You remind me so much of Mr. Putaya, because he would say this at this very forum. Everybody has a book, write it.
Right, I agree with. Of course, he was right. He was Mr. Putaya. But I definitely think it's a lot of fun actually to sort of do that, because you always start with a blank page, but then you almost always end up with a story somehow on the page, and it's just that part of it is amazing. You start with just a blank page, and then words are.
So one of the most moving sections, there are many, but to me, one of the most moving is this whole interaction between Sanjay and SRD Vaidyanathan.
It's my favorite part.
I'd like to read a portion of it before we come to the last part of our program. In 2002, I was in Trichy for a concert when I met Nadaswaram artist Qasim, Sheikh Chinna Maulana's grandson, with whom I used to talk a lot about music back in the day. He told me once about a letter he received congratulating his radio program from the Vidwan SRD Vaidyanathan, and I asked if I knew the man who would go on to influence me over the next decade. In the early 90s at Tiruvayadu, I had heard SRD perform a Tyagaraja Kriti on the Nagaswaram. I remember a particularly brilliant Sangati to which a man who was seeking alms on the street had responded with Sabash. I'll never forget that moment. When he got off stage, musician Tanjavur Shankarayar asked me, "Do you know who he is?" That is Sembonar Kovil. I knew he was Mayuram SRD Vaidyanathan, but didn't know that the S stood for Sembonar Kovil. That was my first fleeting meeting with him. I hadn't spoken to him for years since. Qasim said, "He's a lovely man, you should meet him," and of course I went. After his surgery, SRD had stopped playing the Nagaswaram. He asked me if I would sing. I did. Kamboji, if my memory serves me right. Then he sang a padam in Raga Athana Summa Summa. It was so beautiful, I fell for it instantly and said to him in passing, "I would like to learn this from you one day." He called me a fortnight later, and after we exchanged pleasantries, he probed most gently, most delightfully. "Want to learn that Athana, do you? Are you coming?" I went to him right away. I also heard him sing Mallari, which is usually played on the Nagaswaram, and he taught it to me. I then sang it in a concert. This specialized compositional form was a stronghold of instrumentalists, especially Nagaswaram artists, and barely any vocalist sang it until then. It was my guru SRD who made me sing it in a kacheri. SRD would sing Mallaris at home because he could not play the Nagaswaram after his surgery. This is how he came to teach it to me. Around the time that I was learning from him, I was his only vocalist student. As far as I know, everyone else was a Nagaswara Vidwan. One day he said to me, You sing Mallari Thambi, it'll be nice. I asked him why. He said, no one has done it. You do it and the world will praise you. It'll be fantastic. Wait and see. I was so taken with everything he said and did, I didn't even have to think before agreeing to sing it. He taught me about 8 Mallaris and I began performing them right away with Swaram, Korvai and Koraipu. I also started singing Ragam Thanam Mallari instead of Ragam Thanam Pallavi. When I sang these on stage, they were received very, very well. Having these conversations with him opened up psychologically a space of freedom in singing for me. Is it because Nagaswaram Vidwans play out in the open that their minds too seem so open in terms of ideas? We perform inside auditoriums and I fear that it has restricted our creative thinking. This freedom I was embracing showed up even in the way I thought about sound production. And that brings me to your entire section on voice, which is something that I would like you to speak about. Because I doubt if anybody would so boldly tread on a topic like that and talk about the entire journey the way you have done in this book.
Actually, it's probably the only chapter she didn't come prepared for.
Completely taken aback, yes.
Yeah, see, we have to humanize ourselves first. And when you humanize yourself, you have to talk about your failings as much as you talk about your assets or whatever it is. And people always, that is something that I have worked with, I keep working with. And as a singer, the voice is your primary instrument. And for many years I have grappled, see, this is something from the beginning that I have faced. I have had a problem with voice production or the way I use my voice. And I know that it has been reasonably successful in bringing out the music that I wanted to see. But at the same time, I was not in the most comfortable space many times. So for instance, when you start a concert, like in those days, those times you were still bold, you would just go to the concert. Like for instance, the kind of lifestyle you had at that point of time is irresponsible to the core. That is the kind of lifestyle we led. I will give you an example in this sense. You go to a concert in Madurai. You take a train at 9 o'clock in Pandian Express with a set of accompanists. We are traveling second class. You speak continuously till 12:30. And you can't even speak in this volume. You shout above the sound of the train to be heard. And you do that till 12:30. And then you get up at 6:30 in the morning. Then you go and crash in the hotel after a heavy breakfast. And then after lunch you go and watch a movie. You come back at 5 o'clock, change and go to the concert. Now what kind of preparation is this for a singer? If this is not irresponsible, what can we do? That's the kind of lifestyle, because you thought you could get away with anything. You were young and you did. Because on stage, something else takes over. In a sense that you are driven by the occasion, there is some adrenaline rush, then the voice warms up after an hour or an hour. See, it is normal for voices to warm up after an hour. Once you start singing, after an hour or something, you are into your elements. But at first 1 hour, you never understand that people have to suffer through that. And that is where you are grateful to those people. Because they were happy enough to put up with that. Because they expected something else after that 1 hour. And you also delivered something. So this process became more and more difficult when you grew older. See, in young age you didn't see it, you didn't think it like that. When you became older, then it was even more tougher. And for me, the turning point actually was that, I finished the Music Academy. I think I've written about it in the book also. I finished the Music Academy concert, I get off the stage, you are on a high. Sangeeta Kalanidhi, it's a huge crowd, and you come off feeling at top of the world. And it's like scoring 100 at Lords and somebody comes and tells you, you were beaten in the first ball, no? Exactly that. What would you think? You won the match for the team and somebody comes and says that. So somebody came and said, why is there a problem? Then I said, I have to do something about it. At some point, I can't keep doing it. So that struggle, that whole process of thinking differently. So the moment you start working on the voice, everything else changes. Like for instance, the music changes, the way you produce the music changes, the way you thought about music changes. And all these things together come together in a very nice way when you are doing everything. So in a sense, it refreshes your entire perspective of what you did for 30-35 years. And you're actually renewing yourself with the music and yourself. In a way, it makes you look forward to the next 20 years, more than anything else. Like, the 60 years I had the Carnatic போனோங்கிறதுக்கு பதிலா ஊர்லயே உட்கார்ந்து இன்னும் வேலை பண்ணாங்க.
Correct.
So why think about retirement when you are?
I'll be 16 next
So
year.
you start writing fiction.
Thank you, Sanjay. Last questions. So, Krupa, where next from here? Same question to both of you. So, first Krupa, then Sanjay.
Actually, I have another novel that's going to come out soon, pretty soon. It's in its last stages. So, I'm kind of nervous about that. Yeah, so I won't say anything more. Yeah.
Sanjay?
More or less, like I said, I'm calling myself a singer these days. So, being a singer means that, we are in that situation where sometimes you have a concert, sometimes you have a recording, sometimes you have a jam session, sometimes you have a discussion that goes nowhere. But you're ready for everything, that's where it is. So, for me, it's anything that comes, I'm willing to look at it and see it. So, it's an interesting time to be.
So what next for you?
I wish I had that answer. But I'm sure there'll be lots of interactions with both of you in the years to come. That's something that I will look forward to always. Thank you so much for being here. And now I hand over the mic to Vandita.
NBC rules. Very brief questions to the point, please, so that everybody else can have a chance. Thank you.
It's been absolutely pleasant, enlightening, entertaining, as your music is. My question is, why autobiography and not a biography? And what do you think about the critics, the writings about your performance?
No, autobiography, I think it's answered because it was an editorial decision for them to take that it will be better. Critics, I've never bothered much about it because there are no critics in Carnatic music, there are only reporters. There were a few in the past, at least in the 80s or something, but we never took them very seriously because our gurus told them they don't know music. Never bothered. No, Subbudu never wrote about me. I was too small at that time.
Yes, regarding structure of the concept, still is Rekudi's Kacheri Paddhati is still relevant, or is it trying to break that pattern? Is it okay to break the pattern?
I am comfortable with it at the moment, but it keeps breaking depending on so many issues. Supposing I have to sing for 45 minutes, I can't sing in Aliyapudi Paddhati. If you sing an all India radio recording, you don't sing in Aliyapudi Paddhati. There's no Paddhati there. And anyway, concert structure is that today we have reached a stage where everything is individual. There is no system anymore. So each musician can do whatever he or she wants to do as long as they satisfy their audience and the audience is happy. So it doesn't matter, really. So today those things are not relevant anymore.
Excuse me?
And in any case, there is no such thing as an Ariyapudi Paddhati. He never took credit for it. He himself gave a talk in 1931 in the Indian Fine Arts Society where he speaks about the concert format as it exists. He does not say at any place that he fashioned it. And we know from writings in the 1890s that the same format existed even then. It's completely wrong to ascribe it to him or to take credit for breaking what he had set up. It just didn't exist. It just morphed over time. That's about it.
Next question.
People who wanted to break it and take an advantage of it used Ariyakudi's name for it.
Krupa, I find that this book has no index. And was that a conscious decision? Because many non-fiction books published in India don't have index.
Yeah. So we thought about this, and we included a glossary at the end, just for for the terms that we thought might need some explanation. But because this was, I felt like it might break the.
Well, the index is at the end of the book.
Yeah, I
And
know.
it's sort of, people can check whether, songs are
Sorry,
mentioned.
excuse me. Can she just answer the question? There are other people waiting also. Thank you.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Let me just think about this and get back to you. I think we had a discussion about the index.
No, we had a discussion about
and
it.
then something happened. And
We had
then-
to choose between a glossary and an index,
Yeah.
or something like that. So I thought the glossary meant more to a non-musical audience than an actual index. That's what was the discussion.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
but the
get back
index
to
is
you.
about the content.
Of course, we get what you say. Yeah. Maybe
Thank
next
you.
edition we'll do.
Thank you.
I had a fun question. How did the doctors miss?
He mentioned it as Woodhouse would have
No,
said.
you expect him to do a surgery? Omelette avana vittirukku.
Exit hurriedly followed by where? Isn't that what you wanted to say?
Melted into the outer darkness.
Melted into the outer darkness. That's all that happened. Next question.
தமிழ் சினிமாக்கு ரஜினிகாந்த் எப்படியோ கர்நாடிக் மியூசிக் வேர்ல்டுக்கு நீங்க ஒரு சூப்பர் ஸ்டார். தமிழ் சினிமா அதில் வந்து சர்வே யாரும் இருக்கிறது தெரியல. இருந்தாலும் உங்க கட்சிக்கு 3000 ரூபாய்க்கு கொடுத்து வர ஆடியன்ஸா இருக்கா. நீங்க வந்து ஸ்டார்ட் அப் ஆரம்பமே நீங்க ஒரு யூனிக்கான வந்தீங்க. நீங்க பாடுற முதல் கச்சேரியே ஒரு வெட்டரன் கச்சேரி பாத்தீங்க. ஏரியஸ் கான்சர்ட்ஸ் நீங்க கல்யாண கச்சேரியெல்லாம் பாட மாட்டேன்னு சொல்லுவா. கல்யாண கச்சேரிய தனியா ஒரு சேம்பர் மியூசிக் கூட பண்ணுவேன். நெவர் யூஸ் டு சிங் இன் a concert. ரொம்ப it was one of the proud of living in the period in which concerts and the concerts புரட்சி எல்லாம் பண்றாங்க. அதாவது மங்கள பாட்டு கச்சேரி ஆரம்பிக்கலாமா? ஓமான முதல் பாட்டா பாடிட்டு
அது அவாவா சௌரியம் சார். அது அவாவா சௌரியம்.
அப்படியே
ஆமா ஆமா. எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச ஒருத்தர் வந்து சாப்பாடு சாப்பிட்டு கடைசியில சூப் சாப்பிடுவார். ஆமா, அப்புறம் சூப் சாப்பிடுவார். அதனால அவாவா சௌரியம் சார். குடிச்சுட்டு சாப்பிடுறவா இருக்கா, சாப்பிட்டுட்டு குடிக்கிறவா இருக்கா?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sanjay, do you have any regret that you gave up your Carnatic competency for breaking?
Absolutely no.
Anyone else? At the back. On the pillar.
Just to information, today is V Sriram's Remembrance Day. We met here on that day. And one question, if it is not wrong. சங்கீத கலாநிதி கொடுத்தாச்சுன்னா அது பிரகாரம் பாடக்கூடாதுன்னு மாதிரி சில நினைக்கிறாரு. அது கரெக்டா?
இல்லையா, யார் சொன்னா?
சில ரசிகர்கள் சொல்றாங்க.
ரசிகர்கள் சொல்றது நான் கேட்கறதுக்கு சார். அவங்க பாட்டு கேட்டுட்டு போட்டோம் போதும்.
Riya, continue.
This is for Sanjay. Do you believe that there is a value hierarchy between genres of music?
Yes, there is. See, snobs will be snobs. So they will always add by hierarchy to these things, no? Right?
So you don't believe?
No, I don't. I don't.
Thank you.
No.
Yeah, question to both Sanjay and Krupa. What music are both of you listening to these days? Sanjay, because you moved beyond Carnatic music, and Krupa generally to understand what are you listening to these days?
Anything, I listen to everything. Today I was listening to Rachmaninoff. Yesterday I was listening to Kebar Vasuki. Day before yesterday was Buddy Guy. So you can get a.
The only music I'm listening to is the music my toddler is listening to. So maybe that's my husband who asked the questions.
Whatever he plays.
Yeah, these days he really likes one particular song I'm trying to remember. Yeah, the new Rahman song, Jingacha.
That's the toddler who likes this one. Yeah. Last question? Anyone? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause. For our brilliant panel of speakers this evening, it's a true privilege to have you all here, and it shows. This is full beyond the brim house, actually. As interesting and informative as the talk was, it was also a delight to watch three people clearly in sync with each other, good friends, sharing a sense of humor, a lightness about them which doesn't hide their complete and serious commitment to their craft. It made for a great conversation. Thank you. Thank you for this evening, Sanjay Subrahmanyan and Krupa Ji. And as always, thank you, Sriram, old friend of the book club, for knowing exactly how and where to steer the conversation. Today, on World Book Day, let's buy books, and they are available at the back of the hall. Do pick up your copies. I now request Mr. Nagarthan to present tokens of our appreciation to our guests. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nagarthan. Before we close, we have no program in the month of May, so summer holidays in a sense. June 4th, we have artist, writer, producer, director, and multiple award-winning filmmaker Leslie Carvalho present his book Smoke on the Backwaters, Tiny Touch of Deep Purple there, on how a single incident can change the course of a life. 18th June, we present the book The Great Nicobar Betrayal, a collection of essays curated by scientist and author Pankaj Siksaria, deconstructing the potential havoc threatening this biodiversity hotspot and its indigenous communities. Thank you all very much. Good night.